Hello and welcome to Aquarium Thoughts Live. I'm Dave. I hope everything's going well out there for you guys. Basically, in this stream, I do want to talk about bad fish stores, basically how they affect us, how it affects the hobby, what we should be doing about it. I will start off with why I'm doing the stream, why I think it's important. Basically, I was looking for some Mabunas for this tank. I decided to stop by a aquarium store, local fish store. Now, keep in mind, this stream isn't really about like this Petco's and PetSmarts. Those videos have been done. I could go on and on about a PetSmart I've been to, but I primarily want to focus on the local fish stores, which I think are more important in this hobby, mainly because I think it's more important in the hobby with the local fish stores. So I'll go on that. So basically, I was looking for some Mabunas for this, and I was looking at the fish tanks. I went to this one aquarium. I've been to it before. I typically have had iffy experiences with it in the past, although I know one YouTuber out there, he's actually recommended it in the past. And I went, I wasn't really pleased with it for the most part. I mean, it looks nice. Don't get me wrong. It does look nice. It's just a few issues here and there with that. But I did hear it from Jacob's Aquarium, his YouTube channel. He did a fish tour of it. I'm not going to mention the name of the store. I'm sure if you could look through his channel, it'll probably pop up. In fact, let me go ahead and post that right there. So if you guys want to check out his channel, you can. I would say something like a Dustin's Fish Tanks without the 45-hour energy-infused coffee drinks. But so I was in there looking for the Mabunas, and I was just looking, and I was looking at the fish that they had. I was looking at them, and there's one thing that I noticed when I was kind of looking at them. A lot of them actually had sunken bellies. But I was looking at the tank at the fish store, and there's just a lot of sunken bellies in a lot of their Mabunas and their other cichlids. And I'm just thinking, okay, I really I am not gonna confirm or deny that, Joe. But I'm trying not to mention names, but I'm sure you probably know which store I'm talking about. The store does look nice, which kind of disappoints me when I see how their tanks are. I mean, I was seeing the fish with the sunken bellies. I actually got there right before opening, and there is actually some dead fish in the tanks, which I suppose for the most part is normal. But just the amount of them is kind of offsetting for me. And then like a week later, actually went down to San Diego to go to Aquarium Fish Depot. I love that place. Going in there kind of is night and day. I go in there, I check out the tanks. First thing when they opened, I was actually there even before the person opened the doors. And I was looking in their tanks, and I didn't find a single dead fish in there. So I'm thinking like, okay, maybe they shouldn't have all this dead fish. But I just think it's really disappointing to see these bad. I don't know if I want to say bad fish stores. It's just kind of fish stores that kind of have iffy, I guess, practices maybe. What would you guys call it? What would you guys call these kind of practices? Bad fish store. Yeah. Okay, I'll call it a bad fish store. I will actually call those other fish stores horrible fish stores. But I really don't think it's a completely bad fish store or a completely horrible fish store. Although my previous experience with them was basically, this is kind of probably my fault too. They kind of recommended me to go ahead and try a single dwarf chain loach in my tank. But yeah, that didn't turn out well. But let's see. Bob Kaler said from Kaler's Aquatics, dead fish should be cleaned out prior to opening. Tanks topped off. Templars checked. I do that every morning with only 32 tanks. Yeah, they probably should do better practices, like actually getting there before the store actually opens. When I actually got there, once again, it was opening, and I actually got there even before the person did, just because I was doing errands and look, I'm going to stop by, and they opened the door and let people in. Probably should have just did it differently. Although with the dead fish, I guess some fish could die overnight. I'm just kind of disappointed with the amount that was in there, but primarily as well. I mean, you had sick fish in there. You had sunken belly fish. Those should have been caught the day before. Those should have been probably put into a quarantine tank of some sort. They should have some kind of quarantine tank set up where they can actually quarantine the fish. I know down in the Aquarium Fish Depot, they really don't have quarantine tanks down there. But the way that their systems run is everything is set on sponge filters. So if there's sick fish, they could actually, looking at the moon is kind of running around. But the way that they could run, they could shut down tanks for sale. They could just quarantine single tanks. A lot of places, they kind of have some systems where they're all connected. I didn't really look into how this bad fish store was set up. I think they just run sponge filters, but even then, they should be probably shutting down these tanks for sale and getting these fish taken care of. But it's definitely not the first store I've been to. Some stores just throw out poor looking fish, no quarantine. Yeah, that's another thing. I guess maybe they should just have a single. I really don't know what you want to do with that. I mean, if they're savable, I could see. But if you're throwing out the poor looking fish, no quarantine, they could actually pass whatever they have to the other fish in that tank. So yeah, there's no quarantine in our area, our state our state maybe. Yeah, I really don't see a lot of stores around here with quarantines, Joe, which is something sad. I know going down to San Diego, if you ever go down to Pet Zone San Diego, if you catch it on my store tour, they actually quarantine tanks on the sales floor sometimes, where they actually do put a sign that says under quarantine, under observation, where basically they don't quarantine them out of the public's eye, but they do quarantine them where actually people can see. But it's just unfortunate that more stores don't quarantine stuff like that. I mean, even if they do it on the sales floor, it's understandable. I mean, I would rather see quarantine signs on every single aquarium rather than actually them selling it out sometimes. I think this goes into how it affects the hobby. I mean, if they're selling bad fish, if they're selling sick fish, you're gonna be selling to people that don't quite know how to get them well. Personally, I probably wouldn't be the best at getting them well. Yeah, I could probably get a bucket, the hospital tank, but I've had bad experiences with doing that so far, so I'm still kind of learning on there. I'll bet there are fewer than 20 shops that quarantine in the entire country. Yeah, I do know Aquarium Co-op has that system. That's the only one I know for sure. But no, well, how do you define quarantine though? How do you define quarantine? Is it just a room set up for quarantine, or is it that also include the ones on the floor where it says not for sale, where it says quarantine? Because I know Pet Zone San Diego does do that. They do put signs on the window, which I think that would be considered quarantine enough. Although, talking to this person who runs it, he does actually kind of hold fish behind when he gets them. So I think they might actually have some kind of quarantine somewhere. And yeah, Susan, I've seen labeled not for sale, which might be just their version of quarantining. My local fish store stopped buying from me because someone else brought in fish from ick. Yet I went yesterday to collect my credit, and tanks were being treated for ick and other sicknesses. Yeah, see, that's how it's going to affect our hobby, because basically it's it's going to stop hobbyists who actually breed for profit, or just actually are trying to get rid of some of their baby fish that they can't house. It's going to prevent local fish stores from actually picking them up from there. It's just bad overall. I mean, going back onto my previous thought, I don't know if I finished it, but if they're selling sick fish, they're going to give it to people who don't know how to care for them, and it's just going to give the hobby a bad name, saying, okay, the store is just selling fish to die. They're fish murderers. It kind of fuels those activists out there, which it just kind of fuels that. Okay, we should ban this. We should ban that. It's like, but it's just because of the bad few out there that are doing this. Yes, Bob. Excuse me. My local Petco and PetSmart have QT and hospital tanks now in their water rooms, and sometimes under observation signs on their tanks. This gets to the heart of it. Right here, you have local Petcos and PetSmarts, which really have a bad rep about this, actually doing this now. Or you have local fish stores that aren't. And personally, I'd rather support the local fish stores rather than the Petcos and PetSmarts out there. Not that Petcos and PetSmarts are bad. I've been doing. I probably bought this heater right here from them. I bought this rock right here. Let me disappear that, but this rock right here in the middle, I bought that from a Petco. So I do shop from Petcos. I typically avoid PetSmarts. To me, quarantine means no sale for several days when they first arrive. To receive it, to observe under observation signs means they've noticed something wrong. Yeah. Yeah. Quarantine means no sale. Yeah, under observation. Yeah. I think when we're going into that, Joe, I think we're talking about semantics. Definitely semantics there. But yeah, I think I get the gist of that. Yes, Fish and Fanatics. Corey from the Co-op has excellent quarantine program going. He has his own separate room. Basically, people can't see. Yeah, I want that fish. It's like no, it's not for sale. Sorry, they're being quarantined. So that's definitely a good setup. That's probably the way more fish stores should do. I know being in Southern California, real estate is very pricey. So it's kind of hard to dedicate its own room for it. I don't know about that one, Joe. But with anything, Joe, with PetSmart and Petco, it's really going to come down to the store in general. I know the Petco in Orange on Chapman. I actually like that one. They have a really good team running there. They really keep up with their stuff there. I know the PetSmart that I went to over in Orange, same city. That one was just horrendous. One time I went in there, every single fish was sick. I know there's another fish store I went to. Joe, you might know this one. I hope things are changing at this fish store, because it's one thing. Another point on how it affects us. It's sad to see these fish stores go out of business, and I mean it's really bad when good ones go. It kind of hurts as well when these bad ones go, because it's just one less place that I could go to and look at. I went there. I just go in there and there's like dead fish in all the tanks, and there's just people standing around doing nothing. They're just doing nothing, and yet there's all these dead fish in there. I actually did leave a questionable review on one of the review sites, and the person gets back to me and he writes, "Oh, I'm sorry about that. We normally do a good job at taking care of this. Blah 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 blah. We make sure everything's clean. If you see something wrong, make sure you bring it to our attention, and so forth like that." I go back like a few weeks later thinking, okay, I'm going to give him another chance. And this time the person actually running it was there, kind of not doing anything. And you go in there and there's this one tank, probably had like 10 or 15 fish just floating kind of lifeless in the flow. So I'm like thinking, but yeah, it's these little things. I just didn't know about the old management. He seemed nice enough. It's just maybe it was just a few times I actually went in there at bad times. Maybe I know about a month later I did go back and get it kind of did improve, but it's just those two experiences with that place just kind of just put things in my head where it's like okay, I do kind of want to highlight this one from Petsotics. So if you QT fish for a while and they seem to be okay, then put them in their home tank. Just because their fish was okay in QT does not mean that they're never going to get fish. That is a very good point, which is one thing I do want to focus. Also want to mention in this talk is basically, yeah, you might get some fish and they might die in your house. Doesn't mean that you're getting it from a bad. It doesn't mean it's from a bad fish store. It just means there's something off with the parameters where it doesn't quite match up with the fish. It stresses the fish out. The other thing I want to point out about that is I know a lot of people, they say, all their tanks have algae. It's a bad fish store. Algae isn't bad. It's bad to look at. Although there is one aspect into that where basically, yeah, if there's algae in the tank, it might mean that they're lacking in other tasks that do have a detriment to the fish in their tanks. But algae in general isn't bad. Here's where competition's good, Bob, from Bob Kaler. My Petco has new tanks, new system to QT and Medfish. Like it because PetSmart moved in across the street. When I visit either store, viewers always comment on how healthy the fish and tanks look. See, that's where competition's good, and make sure that everyone's kind of keeping their stuff in par. But where I live, there's like 20 different fish stores you could go to. I'm lucky in a place like you have that, although really none really impressed me too much. It's just a lot of the same stuff. I know there's one I really like going to, and if you go in there, you're gonna think, I'm like, okay, do I really want to buy fish from this store? But no, honestly, this fish store, I will leave a name for it, is the 4 or 5 Tropical Fish. Joe, you know that one. But you go in there, it's kind of dingy looking in there. But I've never had any issues with their fish. I've had autos survive on me from that store I don't drip acclimate my stuff. So, but I've always had great luck with that fish store. And you go in there, you're thinking, okay, it's dingy. You have that clown puke gravel. It's like, but no, honestly, I think it's a good store. I don't have issues with them. What do you guys look for when you're actually looking in a fish store, if it's good or bad? What do you guys look for? Is it mainly just the health of the fish, the activity of the fish? Is it really just algae? Okay, that tank looks like it has too much algae. Okay, Fissionetics, probably dingy because they spend more time with the fish health. Yeah, that's probably a good point. I mean, this one's just an older store. I guess they don't spend the money on basically taking care of everything in the house, just making sure the fish is good, which is good. You want to primarily focus on the fish health. You don't want to focus on, that's just aesthetics. If you're looking, oh, that's a nice little setup right there. You have the best setup in the world. Doesn't mean you have clean fish. Okay, Joe, there's a place in Westminster that divides fish by color, whether it's African, cichlid, discus, or goldfish. If it's red, it goes in the red tank. Exactly. Okay. Okay, there's a place in Westminster that divides fish by color. Okay, Petsonics. This is probably a response to when I was asking about what do you look for. Health, cleanliness, activity. Algae doesn't really bother me unless it looks like it hasn't been cleaned for 3 weeks. Yeah. Algae doesn't bother me. Activity. I look at the activity. How are the fish acting? Are they kind of actually acting how they should be acting? Health of the fish is good. Cleanliness of the tanks. It depends on what you mean cleanliness by. I know a lot of people look at the algae and say, okay, that's if it has algae, it's not clean. Kaler's Aquatics. I look at how the fish are acting, which is a good point. And then if they have visible signs of disease, I watch fish I might be interested in, while algae has nothing to do with their health. Fish and can be good for the fish. Yeah, algae can be really, really good for especially a lot of the fish that actually eat algae. I really don't think, like I said, I don't think algae is a good indicator of whether or not the tank's clean, whether the fish are healthy. I know a lot of people might think that, which it has no bearing on how the fish are in that tank. So there's probably some aspect to it. Okay, if it's really kicked in algae, it's okay. Okay, are they skipping on the algae? Are they doing other things that are detrimental? Which it could be, it could not be. But then you don't look at the algae for that as a bearing to what you're doing. You are looking at how the fish are acting. Do they look like they're deceased? How are their colors? Although sometimes the colors can really be off if they just recently received the fish. And a lot of the colors in fish are probably not going to be at their best in the fish store to begin with. A lot of times the lighting in fish stores can be a little bit off. Definitely a good point there, Bob. Yeah, people that aren't educated say things like, it needs a good cleaning. Judgmental, ignorant people. Exactly. There's a lot of ignorant people who just don't know better. They hear things from other people and they say, "Oh, algae is bad. Algae is bad," and it's not bad. It's just bad for our viewing pleasure. I mean, if I had algae all over this tank right here, you can't see the fish. Not that algae is bad for these fish. Algae would actually be great for these fish, being mabunas. They do like a very, very vegetarian kind of diet. Algae can also be a good indicator that a tank has never been touched or maintained, in my opinion. Yeah, it can be a good indicator that the tank has never been touched and maintained. That goes back to, it could be an indicator for that. Although you might want to take a better look at those fish, but it doesn't mean that they're bad fish in there. To connect the growth of algae to possible questionable practice is a fallacy. Yeah, it's a big. See, Bob, I think I kind of agree with that, but I kind of don't. I think it's to a point. Okay, are they if they're not cleaning up the algae, can it lead to other things? But I don't think it's a good indicator to decide whether or not the fish is bad or not, or the fish store is bad. Because I know algae in this tank would be excellent. But yeah, I don't think it's a good indicator to go by. You really want to go by other things, because algae can be good, and algae can be good for some fish, like these fish right here. They do like to eat vegetarian stuff. Well, not vegetarian, they're omnivores, but yeah, definitely don't go by the growth of algae when you're deciding, okay, is it a good fish store or not. You definitely do want to look at the other aspects of the business. Yeah, Bob, it definitely does mean that. It only means that the algae is growing faster than can be maintained, or the keeper wants algae. You guys are operating on their false premise that algae is bad. It's not a true supposition. Yeah, algae is not bad. Algae is definitely not bad. Personally, I mean, algae, a better aspect of actually looking at a fish tank inside of a fish store is definitely how the fish are acting, how the fish look. You don't want to look at, okay, is there algae on that? Now, if they had like a fish tank right here with calcium deposits on their glass, that might be definitely a better indicator, because you probably don't have calcium buildup on the outside, definitely. And Petsodic says, I'm speaking from my experience working at Petco. They can get a lot of algae when not maintained on a weekly basis. Yeah, a lot of fish tanks can get algae. You could get algae even if you're maintaining your tanks on a weekly basis. You don't necessarily clean up algae. You could definitely, though, you can maintain an aquarium and actually keep the algae. Primarily, what you want to do when you're maintaining aquariums is making sure that your water is okay. You want to change your water, make sure that the nitrates and the water parameters are good. You want to make sure that the waste is taken care of, so you don't have the water parameters going up. But definitely is just for looks. And I think a lot of that is just the ignorant people that think algae is bad out there. That's why algae is bad in the retail aspect of it. Let's see here. Maintain is a huge word if you mean scraping it. Okay, maintain is a huge word if you mean scraping algae. That has nothing to do with fish health. I've worked in 6 fish stores in 3 states. My experience is it has nothing to do with poor husbandry. No, it does not. Now, when you come across a bad or horrible fish store, what should we be doing about it? If you're seeing like a lot of dead fish in there, what should we be bringing it up to these owners, these people who manage it? What if they really don't do anything about it? Because I really think these stores do give us a bad name out there. It's just detrimental to everything. It goes back to the people who are wanting to start out with aquarium fish keeping. If they're buying diseased fish to begin with, it's a barrier for them to actually join the fish aquarium hobby, because if they keep on killing fish, they can keep on killing fish, and at some point they think it's their fault, which by all means it could be their fault. But if they're getting sick fish to begin with, what should we be doing? Should we actually be bringing it up to the people? I've like that one I talked about. I left the review in the person running kind of I guess blew me off by saying, okay, we normally keep it clean, but I go in there a couple weeks later and it's still bad. What do you do in that instance? What do you do? If I do see a man down, I typically try to at least bring it up to their attention, saying, "I know you have a man down over here. You might want to remove it." Although I've seen other stores too where they have dead fish and they're pretty much almost a skeleton by then. Rachel Larry cultivates various algae. Is she keeping dirty tanks? Does she skimp? Of course not. Nope, Bob. She doesn't skimp. So basically, yeah, that's pretty much what my rant is on that fish store so far. I'm really at a loss sometimes on what to really do. I would really love to try to avoid those places, but I kind of want to support my local fish stores. That's why I typically do try to go to the few that I do know that are good. I might still stop into some of the bad ones to see if they're improved or not. One thing is to cultivate algae, but how many of us cultivate algae? Petsodics, I think most of us actually cultivate algae. If you look at this tank right here, you could actually see some of my cultivation. You have some on the rocks, some on the shells. A lot of that is from actually my previous tank, where I actually had the lights brighter on that. As far as what do we do, Joe, I just don't shop there. Review sites are more often about the reviewer than the actual business. As a result, people read them for comedy, not real info. Yes, Joe. With the review sites, yeah, it's kind of hard sometimes to actually see what's actually real and what's real. I know a lot of people do leave trollish reviews on there. If you really want a laugh, read reviews for apartments. I went to my local fish store that I have bought several red-eye tetras from. Recently, I went just to look around, and I looked in their usual tanks and saw 2 red-eye tetras with huge bulges coming out of their mouths. Ouch. I didn't say anything as I figured they were in quarantine them if they're really bad, but it freaked me out. I've never seen anything like it. It looked tuberous, not fluffy. I have no clue what that is, but yeah, that does sound painful, Bob. That would be hard to. I'd definitely be a place that I'd probably avoid in the future. If they're keeping in there, they're keeping them in there and letting them for sale. Yeah, definitely find a better store. But see, that's what I'm talking about. You get these instances. You see the sick fish in the tank, and yeah. But so that's I think that's it. Can be it for my stream today. I do have to get ready to actually pick up my boys now. Have to pick them up from school. They have an early day, so thanks for all of you to actually come and take a look at my live stream. I appreciate it. Definitely check out my channel. Hit that subscribe button and definitely feed that bell. Thanks for clarifying, Diego. When you say algae in the tank might mean that they skimp on proper care, it sounds like an indictment. Okay. How am I liking the new place? I am loving it. I am loving this place. It's definitely huger. Not huger. Huger is not a word. It's definitely larger. Unfortunately, I did what's the word? I did downsize my tanks. I'm probably gonna go over that on next Wednesday. I'll cover that next Wednesday on my next live stream. Cover the new place. Definitely make sure things are a little bit neater in here, so I can actually do some tours of this place. Thanks, Bob, for leaving that in the comments there. Joe, I will see you Sunday. I do have a split shift that day, so I could actually make it down there. I will be bringing a bunch of stuff for the auction, primarily from a lot of my downsized aquariums. Mainly don't need a lot of the stuff anymore. Unfortunately, here I'm only keeping 2 aquariums now, but I will definitely go over that next Wednesday. So, anyways, keep researching and keep learning, and thanks for joining.